Welcome to Android App Development Fundamentals Part 1. My name is Paul Deitel, and I'll be your instructor for this video-based training. This is based on our book, Android for Programmers, an App-Driven Approach, in which we use our live code approach to present Android capabilities to you in complete working apps that you can test drive on your computer and also on actual Android devices. Now, as a prerequisite for this course, you must be familiar with Java-based object-oriented programming, as Java is the primary programming language of Android. In this Part 1 Live Lessons product, we're going to be focused on Android fundamentals. We have a number of key topics that we'll be covering in Android App Development Fundamentals Part 1. We'll begin with a lesson that shows you how to properly set up and configure your development environment, which you can do either on Windows, Mac OS X, or Linux. Next, we'll show you how to import existing apps into the development tools so that you can test them on your system inside the Eclipse IDE using Android's Android Development Tools plugin, but also showing you how to do it on an actual Android device. Then we'll take a look at how to build a simple Android app. After I show you how to set up your environment, run an existing Android app, and how to build a simple graphical user interface using the Visual Layout Editor inside of the Eclipse IDE, we'll move on to actual Android programming. And one of the key things that we'll be focusing on is the Activity class, which is part of the Android platform, and it provides various lifecycle methods that help you respond to Android operating system lifecycle events, such as starting up an app, closing an app and going on to some other app, which is actually called pausing the app, or responding to various events that occur, such as when the user receives a text message or a phone call in the middle of working with your app. As part of our introduction to Android app development, we'll also be talking about graphical user interfaces, how to handle the events from those graphical user interfaces, and also the built-in layouts that are provided by Android, which you manipulate via XML. One of the key concepts we'll be focusing on throughout this Live Lessons product is a concept called resource files. The graphical user interface layouts that you design are resource files, as are things like the strings that you use inside of an app. By using various resource files, you can separate out resources that are used from your program from the actual source code of the program itself, which actually makes your program easier to maintain, modify, and debug as well. When you start building apps that need to be localized for different spoken languages, using external string resources makes it easier to provide separate string resource files for those other spoken languages, and Android has built into it the ability to automatically select the appropriate string resources file based on a special naming convention. And this is also true for things like different device sizes and your GUI layouts. You can have multiple layout resource files that are designed for the same app to run on phones with varying screen sizes and screen resolutions, and also on tablet devices as well. So a key concept in Android is working with resource files. Now we'll start out with a few apps that are single activity apps, meaning they have basically one screen and maybe they pop up a dialog along the way or have a configuration option capability, but eventually we'll get to the point of having multiple activities in our apps. And we'll talk about an Android concept called intents, which enable you to launch other activities from a given activity. And the activities that you can launch may be part of your own app, but they could also be other apps that are installed on your Android device. So for example, we can launch the browser that's built into your Android device from an app that we build, as we will do in Lesson 5, Favorite Twitter Searches. Throughout our app development, we're going to be talking about various Android features that are built in to help you do things like store user preferences with your app, or to be able to work with media files that are associated with your app. One of the key features we'll be talking about is a concept called shared preferences. It turns out that every app has associated with it a default shared preferences file in which you can store key value pairs of information. and we'll show you both how to use the default one and how to build your own shared preferences files as well. In addition, we'll talk about how to manage assets such as audio files and video files that are associated with your app. We'll talk about how to use various graphics, multimedia, and animation capabilities in Android. And in the case of animation, we'll talk about a couple of different ways of doing animation. We'll talk about so-called view-based animations, where you can only animate certain aspects of GUI components or items that are on the screen. And we'll also talk about a newer feature that was introduced in Android 3 called property animations, and you'll see that it's actually really easy to work with property animations. One of the key things that we'll do in this Part 1 product is talk about how to do threading in Android. It's very important that you maintain the responsiveness of your app's graphical user interfaces with the user. The user doesn't want to have an app that seems to be frozen. And in fact, if an app does not respond to the user within a certain period of time, a dialog will appear on the screen that allows the user to terminate the app right there and then. And one of the ways to avoid that is by not doing long-running tasks in the graphical user interface thread of execution. So we'll talk about how you can separate out long-running tasks such as file and database access into separate threads of execution. In this Part 1 lesson, we'll deal with files, and in Android App Development Fundamentals Part 2, we'll show you how to use databases in that case as well. One of the last capabilities we'll look at in this Part 1 Live Lessons product is the concept of sensors. Now, most Android devices that you'll work with have various sensors built into them. For example, the GPS sensor, altimeter, accelerometer, and sometimes many others as well. Now, we'll take advantage of the accelerometer capabilities of most devices in our last app for this lesson. And basically that app is a drawing application where if you don't like your drawing, you can simply shake the device to erase the drawing. And we'll use the accelerometer to test for the concept of shaking the device and then pop up a dialog on the screen that allows the user to decide whether they really want to delete the drawing. So as you can see, we have a number of really interesting features that we'll be covering in Android App Development Fundamentals Part 1. As you work your way through this video product, be sure to check out the additional information that we provide on our website for both the live lessons videos and the corresponding book, Android for Programmers: An App-Driven Approach. If you have any questions at all while working through the videos, please email me at deitel@deitel.com or post a message on our Facebook page or send us a message via our Twitter account. Now, if you like what you've seen in these videos and are interested in having me come on site to do corporate training, feel free to check us out on our training pages at deitel.com. And we also provide training on many other programming related topics. And finally, be sure to look at the resource centers that we provide on deitel.com, where we have Android and other programming related topics with lots of links to online sites that provide more information about Android and those other topics. I hope you enjoy learning with Android App Development Fundamentals Part 1.